Hi everyone, Ken, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about webhooks and AI. Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And I know you're a big fan of AI, so I'm looking forward to hear what you have in store for us today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been tinkering with a lot of these generative models. I think it's really interesting, and there's some interesting news recently. I think even I don't know if you saw this actually, which is Sam Altman made like a joke post on Reddit about they already achieved the AGI in OpenAI.
No,
Yeah,
I did
made
not.
some waves, obviously. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I saw an interesting tweet from this guy. He had an idea for how to use AI with like webhook payloads. His
Okay.
basic idea is, when you get these webhook payloads, they're in like these sometimes like gigantic JSON objects. It's like very not readable by humans. And so he wanted to take the JSON payload, send it to an LLM, and have it kind of like summarize it for you, and then like send it to wherever you need it to go.
Huh. You know, that sounds like fun. To be honest, I don't know
Mm,
like how that would be used in a product, but I guess like it's yeah, webhooks are so information dense, like a lot, so
yeah.
kind of like because they're meant for consumption of computers. So I guess that's an easy way to just get webhooks and turn them into like a machine to human interface kind of thing. Yeah, I like it. Sounds cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting if you have like you need to react to the payload in in like a customer facing fashion. I'm
Yeah.
not exactly sure what his intended use case for it was. Um, but yeah, I mean, I know people send like a lot of Slack messages based on
Yeah,
webhooks, so that could be
I was
one
just gonna
that
say,
works pretty well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that almost, so like we have a way in Svix to kind of like do what we call transformation templates, which is essentially a way for you to, as a webhook provider, to say like, oh, if this webhook is intended for human consumption, change it like this so it's more human, readable. But I guess like we can just use a tool like this to automatically, you know, make it human consumable. That's interesting. Actually, now
Yeah.
that you say it, like maybe we should add it to the product. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Build the
It's at least
templates in
a
AI.
fun
Yeah,
option. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, So that was like one category. So that's kind of how like AI can help with actual webhooks themselves. I think most of the use
Hmm.
cases that I've seen for AI right now are either are like operational or like the AI is actually using it.
Hmm.
So like from an operational perspective, it's more like triggering the generative models, right? So user does something and then it triggers you to
Yeah,
like
like I
send this
upload a
information to the
file
model or something.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then the other one that's actually more like even at like a basic level is when people are actually training their new models. That takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
And so they're sending webhooks based on when the training is done or when it's like at like when they reach certain levels of I don't know what they call it, but it's like when the model reaches a certain level of like competency to
Yeah.
stop the training and stuff like that too.
You know, yeah, I think AI in many ways is similar to logistics.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like, it just takes time to, the machine all the stuff. So it's kind of like, for the bits to get in the right shape, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But really, and I think this is like where webhooks shine, right? Like all of these asynchronous notifications when things take a long time to happen. So training is a great example, or just like, yeah, exactly, like
And
building
even
the
even
model.
actually, I think initially I said when you're like want to trigger the generative model to actually like
Yeah.
generate something for you, but also I've seen people send webhooks when the actual generation is also done, because that can take like a minute sometimes even, right? And you don't want to
Yeah.
have that API connection open. You have to just be waiting for a response for an entire minute.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. And I think it's more, we're still just starting with AI. And I think the more, it's kind of like when the web started, you had like 5 browsers active at each time. That's it, right? Kind of like the whole web, or maybe like 5 browsers,
oh,
and then like maybe later like 5 web browsers. I mean, before it was a browser, but like
now
on a website.
now I'm pretty yeah, yeah, yeah. Now I'm pretty sure I have like 20 tabs open on just my
Yeah.
computer, right?
Exactly. So I think like when those use cases start to really explode, we're gonna see it's gonna become so now it's kind of like very easy for us to say like, oh yeah, we train a model and it takes a minute to go back, but maybe in the not too distant future, we're gonna be like, yeah, of course, we train 20,000 models in parallel for like a custom model
Mm.
for each one of our customers or whatever based on their most recent. I don't know. I think yeah, it's gonna be very interesting
Well,
to
that's
see like
interesting too.
how
Yeah,
yeah
if you're mass doing them, you'd want to know which one like worked out the best, and then they could even
Yeah,
like filter
100%.
for you and stuff like that. Oh, that's very
Exactly.
interesting.
So I think like even now it makes a lot of sense to kind of like build automation around it. So kind of like have an API call to generate it and do
Hmm.
like the webhook to get back. But also in a way, it takes 7 hours. You start it and then you go back and check it after 20 hours. It's not the end of the world kind of thing if it's like very low volume. But we see like more and more companies like as their volume increases as well. It's going to be like extremely important to automate all of that. Yeah.
Cool. Now, the last category, which I think is really interesting, because we kind of dive into some specific examples, is like this webhook is like a feature inside of the AI product itself, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there are a couple, like I think more generic ones, like enriching data, like connecting data into different systems,
Hmm.
right? And so user uploads something, like you're saying, and then it reads it, and then it can like send the enriched data into like maybe like your CRM or to like your email tool or something.
Yep.
Um, that's something that even like some Spix users have done. One of the really cool ones from a Spix customer, they're called Spot AI, and they do AI vision. So I think they like connect into your video feeds, and the AI can see what's happening in the video, and they send webhooks based on if it sees something
Yeah.
very specific in the video that you've defined.
Yep. Yeah. So like the way I see AI in this regard is kind of like it's almost like humans, right? I mean, what you just described is essentially a security guard or like a video
Mm.
monitoring guard. So it's kind of like we have like these thousands or millions of little elves that just like do magical elves that do stuff for us. So in this case, Spot AI has magical elves called AI that just watch videos all the time, and then like they want to let you know when something happens, but you know the interaction between us and elves is like inherently asynchronous, right? I mean, like we ask the elf to do something and then they come and let us know like when something happened, or they come and let us know when they finish doing that something. And this is again like the asynchronous nature of that is like really lends itself to webhooks. And so that's like another great example of like where webhooks can be used. I mean, I mean, like Spot AI really sounds like one of the. I mean, I know the company from before, but like really sounds like one of the great examples of like where AI and webhooks like really play well together.
Yeah, I hadn't seen one like quite like that, where it's actually kind of embedded inside of the product in that way.
Yeah,
Like even some of the other ones that I found are like, oh, they summarize your video calls for you. I think Zoom actually even built this into as a feature. I think there are companies built around it.
yeah,
Where like a call happens, it automatically sends you a summary of the call afterwards, right? But
yeah,
again, it's always like an afterwards thing. But like with Spot AI, it was very specific, like inside of the
yeah.
product. Oh, something happened. The AI recognized something that it's not just like it happens every time necessarily.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
thought that was
I
pretty cool.
think I think we just, you and I are just maybe not aware of that. I'm sure there are like plenty of AIs deployed there that kind of like listen to weird noises in infrastructure pipes, and
Mm,
they let you know that like something is above threshold, and then to do that they send like a webhook either to them, like to the people, but also kind of like to other systems. Um, like I don't know, surely there are AIs to do like weather monitoring and all of that. There are like a lot of places where I think it also like kind of like connects to a different trend that we see everywhere else, which is we have it's kind of like the Unix way of doing things, which is like do one thing and do one well. So we have a lot of companies doing like one specific thing. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Spix actually, we do webhooks really, really well. We don't do SMS, we do webhooks, but we do webhooks very well. And then people use that as part of the product. So I think like with AI as well, you have people doing like so many specific stuff that can be integrated as part of your product, and like that's like webhooks really shine there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of AI startups right now are getting criticized as like, oh, they're just like ChatGPT wrappers,
Yeah,
right? But I think even if it's just a ChatGPT wrapper, if they've like built the UI around a specific use case, and like
yeah,
they've built their own custom prompts that you might not think of yourself, and it like generates better outputs,
yeah.
um, it seems valuable. And like you're saying, like there's actually a lot of room, I think, even if all you're doing is wrapping the ChatGPT, like to be creative about when you actually send these prompts in the workflows,
Yeah.
instead of
I
having
mean,
to kind of figure that out on your own.
a lot of things. I mean, like in the beginning, it was just like, oh, it was just a website for selling, kind of like, how do you call it, like pets.com, like pet pet stuff. I mean, that's a terrible example because they failed. But a lot of companies were just like, Amazon was just a website for selling books. But
Yeah.
it turns out that actually that's very valuable. And then you had apps that's just an app to do X. But it turns out that having like an app just to take picture and upload them to show with your friend, that's very valuable. And I think with AI as well, you're gonna have a lot of pets.com, but you're gonna have a lot
Yeah.
of like these really specific use cases that uncover a need that actually an AI unlocked, which is, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think one of the bigger concern I have about like those companies that are just like wrapper for ChatGPT is kind of like, okay, what prevents
Mhm.
ChatGPT from doing those use
Mm.
cases? And I think ChatGPT has been like launching a lot of stuff recently that have been competitive with some of their customers. So
Mhm.
that's going to be interesting how that's going to turn out. Is that, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, even that, just like, I mean, I just mentioned the example of people doing, oh, we have this cool tool that like can take your Zoom meetings and summarize it for you, and then
yeah,
Zoom just adds it as a feature, right? So I
yeah,
think that's kind
exactly,
of the big question mark for people building those
yeah.
types of things that are adding on to existing products. I mean, it just seems like it's something that, like, like the Zoom case, they're just going to launch it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a platform risk to the extreme, really. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, cool. That's most of what I want to talk about. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on AI and webhooks in general, but
No, I mean, it's such an interesting space. I think in many ways it's adjacent to what we do, but in many ways it actually
yeah.
like intersects very strongly. And so Ken, keep on keeping an eye out for everything that's going on in the space. Like,
Yes, I do like tinkering. I do like tinkering with these
yeah,
tools. And
no,
some of them, I mean, we've used them like for our blog covers. It makes really
yeah,
nice art for us instead of the kind of just the boring tech stuff that we were doing before. So we can
no, 100%.
get a
Yeah,
little bit of flair on them. So
that has been very beneficial for us because it also I don't think designers really like doing them anyway. So it was like hard to get
yeah,
designers to really like engage to do like what we need them to do.
yeah,
And yeah, so it's
it's
kind of
not that
like,
exciting of work for them, I guess.
yeah, exactly. And for us, it's just like, hey, we need a turnaround of like 2 seconds, 5 seconds for this. And we don't care about, like, I mean, obviously we care about the quality, but we don't care about like if it's like 95% there, 100% there. It doesn't
Yeah, we
matter
don't
for
need to
us
be
because it's just like an
exactly what we
asset.
wanted. Yeah, it
Yeah.
can just kind of, it's a little, a lot of times it's just kind of creative and kind of an interesting blob of stuff. But again,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, it looks good. It's not always exactly what we want, but it always generates something interesting.
Yeah, I was actually talking to like a relative of mine the other day, and he's like a professional photographer, and he was talking about, I was asking him like, "Hey, are you scared of AI?" And what he said, I mean, but to be fair, he's like in a later stage of his career, so maybe he's not scared about the prospects of his future as much as like someone just joining the
Yeah.
space. But he was just, what? I used to have a lot of boring jobs. I don't have them anymore. Now I only have the stuff that like really requires my
Mhm.
specialty, and that's fun. And he said like, and then also I am able to do more of these exciting jobs because I use AI a lot. Like it's amazing to see like what the Adobe suite like does
Yeah.
nowadays. So he was excited. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be like kind of like when you asked taxi drivers about Uber in the beginning and they would
Hmm.
hate it. But here was
Yeah.
actually he was very excited about the prospects. So that was
Well, I think
interesting.
it's a little bit different between Uber's kind of just like directly competing. That this seems like it can be a helpful tool. And I've, like my wife actually, she I might cut this part, but she when we were in San Antonio,
Yeah.
she knew like these like people who owned art studios. They were connected to the school that she used to teach at, and
Hmm.
she was asking them about it, and they were actually also excited about it. Mostly because they're on the teaching end, so they were actually excited at how it could like
Yeah.
potentially like inspire the kids. Like, oh, they get to like create something that looks nice without and that can maybe like trigger them into to learning and stuff.
Yeah, but
So
without
that's cool.
skills, which is kind of like suck.
Yeah.
Like when you can do a lot without skills.
Well, but I think from them, like what they saw is that is the kids' reaction to it, and then
Yeah,
it got them interested in art more, and then they wanted to learn how to like do it themselves, which is interesting.
cool.
So Tom, thanks for coming and chatting about AI with me. I know I talk about it a lot, and I use a lot of these tools. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how it could apply to webhooks.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I also use a lot of these tools all the time. Like it is a paradigm shift. So it is exciting to see like where where it's kind of like where our worlds intersect.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear actually if anybody has any other use cases that they've heard of. That's a bit novel. Those are the ones that are most interesting to me that I haven't kind of thought of before. So leave it in the comments if you have like an interesting AI product that uses webhooks in some way.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Ken.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.